Chosen. 1. Stop scrolling immediately. What you did in secret just caused angels to freeze in mid-flight. Heaven literally paused because of a decision you made when no one was watching. The spiritual realm is still reverberating from your act of obedience. Chosen 1. Before we go deeper, pause for a moment. If this message is already speaking to your spirit, don't just watch silently. Subscribe now so you don't miss the confirmations God sends your way. You know how the enemy tries to distract you right when you need a word the most. The moment happened so quickly you almost missed it. You stood at the crossroads between what was easy and what was right, between what would bring temporary relief and what would preserve your soul. And without fanfare, without anyone to witness or applaud, you chose God. You chose purity when compromise knocked loudly. You chose forgiveness when revenge felt justified. You chose to walk away when staying would have poisoned your spirit. And heaven froze. Not because your choice was loud, not because it was celebrated by others, but because it was costly, because it was pure, because it showed God who you really are when pressure mounts. The enemy witnessed it too. That's why attacks increased. That's why pressure intensified. That's why people suddenly turned cold toward you. Your obedience triggered warfare. Your alignment activated opposition. The spiritual realm doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your heart's position. The unseen world doesn't react to your public performance. It moves at your private surrender. When you chose God in that hidden moment, you disrupted generational patterns. You canceled curses that were set against you. You rewrote spiritual assignments that were prepared to destroy you. Now the enemy is scrambling. Evil is reorganizing. Darkness is plotting new strategies because your one act of obedience just changed everything. Strange things have been happening around you, haven't they? Coincidences that don't feel random. Dreams that seem too real. Conversations that confirm what God whispered to your heart years ago. These are not accidents. These are divine markers. Heaven is confirming your path. But not everyone celebrates this. Someone close to you, someone you trusted, has begun to pull away. Their words have changed. Their support has cooled. What you don't see is the jealousy burning behind their eyes. What you don't recognize is how your light exposes their compromise. This betrayal isn't random. It's confirmation. The enemy always targets relationships connected to your destiny. He always attacks bonds that would strengthen you for your next season. Your dreams have intensified too. Those vivid visions showing fragments of your future, glimpses of your impact, flashes of your authority. They come right before dawn, don't they? When the veil between worlds is thinnest. These dreams aren't just sleep experiences, they're divine downloads. Strategy sessions with heaven, preparation for battles you haven't yet encountered. What confuses many around you is your peace. They don't understand how you can remain calm when everything is shaking, how you can stay steady when relationships are breaking, how you can maintain joy when accusations fly. This peace isn't normal. It's supernatural evidence of your selection. The isolation increasing around you isn't punishment, it's protection. God is removing voices that would confuse you during this critical transition. He's creating space where He can speak clearly without interference. The mark of heaven on your life is becoming more visible now. Those with spiritual sight can see it. Those with discernment can sense it. Those aligned with darkness can feel it, and they fear it. You're being set apart not because you're perfect, but because you're willing. Not because you're flawless, but because you're faithful when it costs everything. The fire has come to your household now, hasn't it, chosen one? Those who share your blood but not your calling have begun to question your decisions. Family members look at you with confusion in their eyes, wondering why you've changed, why your priorities have shifted, why you no longer fit their expectations. You're too religious now. You're too serious about God. You're throwing away opportunities. These words cut deeper than any enemy attack because they come from those you love most. This conflict isn't accidental. It's a divine filter. Family resistance is evidence that your calling is real, not imagined. Then came that moment, that impossible choice, when obedience required everything. When God asked you to lay down what you loved, to walk away from what felt secure, to surrender what others said you'd be foolish to release. And you obeyed, with tears streaming down your face, with your heart breaking, with questions swirling. You still chose God's way over your own comfort. That decision marked you forever. It was after this sacrifice that the mentor appeared. Remember? That person who looked at you differently than others did, who saw past your struggle to the calling beneath, who recognized heaven's fingerprints all over your life. "I see what God is doing with you," they said. The words felt like cool water on parched ground. Finally, someone who understood. But as this divine connection strengthened you, external pressure multiplied. Criticism increased, doors closed, resources dried up. Yet in this pressure, a strange, unexplainable peace filled your spirit, a quiet knowing that transcended your circumstances. While everything external shook, your foundation remained steady. This is the refiner's fire, chosen one. Not to destroy you, but to purify you. Not to harm you, but to prepare you. Not to punish you, but to position you for what comes next. It came without warning, the betrayal that took your breath away. Someone from your inner circle, someone who knew your weaknesses, someone who had access to your heart. They turned on you with shocking precision. Words spoken in confidence became weapons used against you. Trust freely given became a pathway for pain. Loyalty you counted on dissolved like morning mist. The wound cut soul deep because it came from one you called friend, one who sat at your table, one who knew your struggles and your dreams. For a moment, retaliation felt justified. For a season, revenge seemed reasonable. The enemy whispered how you could expose them, how you could fight back, how you could make them pay for what they did. But in that critical moment, heaven watched closely. Would you become what hurt you? Would you abandon your character under pressure? Would you choose the lower path when wounded? You chose forgiveness instead. You chose silence when you could have exposed. You entrusted justice to God when you could have seized it for yourself. Listen, I know you're watching quietly, just taking everything in. But chosen ones like you don't come across these messages by accident. If this is touching your soul, hit that subscribe button. Don't keep walking through spiritual warfare alone when a whole family of chosen ones is right here with you. Then came the revelation that changed everything. In prayer, God showed you why the betrayal was permitted. It wasn't punishment, it was promotion. It wasn't random, it was strategic. The betrayal was allowed as a divine filter. What left had to leave before your next level. Who departed couldn't access your future. The relationship that broke couldn't withstand your elevation. God used betrayal to remove what would have become poison in your next season. Then it happened. That supernatural encounter that confirmed everything. Whether through a dream, a prophetic word, or a divine moment of clarity, heaven confirmed your identity as chosen. You realized you weren't marked by what they did to you. You were marked by how you responded. Not by your wounds, but by your forgiveness. Not by your pain, but by your peace that passed understanding. Then, chosen one, the wilderness season arrived without warning. The isolation felt almost physical, like walls closing in around your life. Friends stopped calling, invitations ceased, ministry opportunities vanished. You found yourself alone with God in ways you never experienced before. This wasn't punishment. This was sacred preparation. The financial strain came next. Resources that once flowed freely suddenly constricted. Unexpected bills, delayed payments, opportunities that seemed certain mysteriously dissolved. The enemy wanted you to believe God had abandoned you, that your obedience led to lack rather than abundance. Relationships withered too. People who once sought your company now avoided your presence. The loneliness cut deep. Nights spent wondering if anyone remembered your name, your gifts, your calling. But in this stripped-down season, something profound happened in your sleep. Your dreams intensified, becoming more vivid, more specific, more prophetic. Heaven began downloading battle strategies while your body rested. You saw angels contending for you, fighting battles you couldn't see in the natural realm. You witnessed spiritual wars being waged over your destiny. You glimpsed enemies being defeated while you slept. These weren't mere dreams. They were divine intelligence reports from the war room of heaven. Then came that moment, that first testing of your authority. Someone challenged you, someone questioned your calling, someone mocked your wilderness season. And something rose up within you, a boldness not your own, a confidence beyond your natural capacity, a power that surprised even you. Words flowed from your mouth with authority you didn't know you carried. Truth poured from your heart with precision that could only be divine. Power manifested through simple obedience. Listen, I know you're watching quietly, just taking everything in. But chosen ones like you don't come across these messages by accident. If this is touching your soul, hit that subscribe button. Don't keep walking through spiritual warfare alone when a whole family of chosen ones is right here with you. After the first taste of power, the silence descended. Heavy, thick, disorienting. Prayer felt like speaking into an empty room. Worship seemed to bounce off the ceiling. The voice of God that once guided you clearly now seemed absent. This silence triggered your deepest fears. Had you misheard? Had you failed somehow? Had God changed his mind about you? The enemy's whispers grew louder in the quiet. God has abandoned you. Your calling was just your imagination. You've been forgotten. This crisis of faith shook you to your core. You questioned everything, your identity, your purpose, your sanity. Tears became your language when words failed. Groans became your prayers when sentences wouldn't form. Then your mentor spoke those words that anchored your soul. Silence doesn't mean absence. It means heaven is rearranging ranks. They explained that before major promotions, God often goes quiet. Not because he's abandoned you, but because he's setting up your next level. Not because he's forgotten you, but because he's focusing on you with such intensity that he won't allow distractions. When a master creates a masterpiece, they said, there comes a moment when they step back, assess their work, and prepare for the final strokes that will complete their vision. Despite having no visible confirmation, you continued in obedience. You kept praying when prayers seemed to go nowhere. You kept believing when faith made no sense. You kept moving when the path disappeared beneath your feet. This obedience in silence revealed something you never expected, the identity of your hidden opponent. Someone in your spiritual community, someone who smiled in your presence while plotting in your absence, someone who used the language of faith while operating with the heart of fear. Their mask slipped during your silence. Their true nature revealed itself when they thought you were weakened. Their opposition became obvious when they believed you couldn't see. God's silence wasn't punishment, it was protection. It was allowing your enemies to expose themselves when they thought you were most vulnerable. Just when you thought the testing was complete, chosen one, the breakthrough came. That moment when prayers finally manifested, when promises began to take form, when hope became reality. For a moment, you breathed freely again, believing the worst was behind you. That's when the attacks multiplied with shocking intensity. Warfare escalated to levels you'd never experienced before. The enemy, realizing your breakthrough couldn't be stopped, launched a full assault against your mind, body, and spirit. This wasn't random. It was strategic. The enemy doesn't fight what he owns. He fights what he's losing. Physical manifestations began appearing in your life. Unexplainable illness that doctors couldn't diagnose. Accidents that defied logic. Sleep disrupted by oppressive presence. Technology failing around you. Finances attacked without warning. Your body became a battlefield because your spirit was winning. Then came that day, that revelation that changed everything. When God showed you the generational patterns being broken through your obedience. Cycles of addiction, poverty, divorce, abuse, chains that bound your family for generations were shattering because you stood firm. The attacks intensified, not because you were doing something wrong, but because you were doing something right. Not because you were failing, but because you were succeeding where generations before you had fallen. You were dismantling strongholds built over centuries. You were canceling agreements made before your birth. You were rewriting spiritual histories with each act of obedience. No wonder hell was raging. No wonder darkness was fighting. No wonder the enemy was desperate. Then it happened, that moment when angels visibly intervened. Perhaps you saw them in a dream. Perhaps you felt their presence in the room. Perhaps someone with prophetic sight described them to you. Perhaps circumstances shifted so dramatically that no explanation existed except divine intervention. Heavenly warriors assigned to your life before your birth stepped forward when the battle reached its peak. They moved with precision and power, enforcing boundaries the enemy could not cross, creating shields the darkness could not penetrate, establishing protection that could not be breached. You realized then, you were never fighting alone. You were never defending yourself. You were never abandoned to face your enemies without help. The angels were there all along, waiting for the moment when human strength reached its limit, so divine power could be displayed without question. Then came your midnight hour, chosen one, that darkest moment when all seemed lost. The moment prophets and psalmists have written about through centuries. The moment when faith is tested beyond what feels endurable. Your health faltered. Your body, once strong, became weak. Pain that couldn't be explained. Symptoms that confused experts. Diagnosis that brought fear. The enemy's attack on your physical vessel was calculated to stop your spiritual momentum. Your relationships fractured simultaneously. People you counted on withdrew their support. Friends you trusted spread rumors about your character. Family members questioned your mental stability. Isolation closed around you like prison walls, cutting off your support when you needed it most. Your very purpose came under fire. Doubt flooded your mind about your calling. Confusion clouded the vision once so clear. The path forward disappeared in fog. Everything God showed you seemed like a distant memory, a dream you'd imagined rather than a promise you'd received. This threefold attack on body, relationships, and purpose was designed to break you completely. The enemy calculated that hitting all areas simultaneously would finally force your surrender, your retreat, your defeat. But here is where heaven held its breath. Here is where angels watched most closely. Here is where your true identity would be revealed, not in your victories, but in your darkest valley. With evidence mounting against every promise, with circumstances contradicting every prophecy, with pain challenging every ounce of faith, you made the most powerful declaration of your life. You stood firm. You declared God's faithfulness when you couldn't feel it. You proclaimed His goodness when you couldn't see it. You affirmed His promises when reality denied them. You spoke life when death seemed certain. Stop right here. If you haven't subscribed yet, ask yourself why. Every time you search for clarity, every time you feel overwhelmed, God guides you to messages like this. Don't reject what heaven is trying to give you. Subscribe so you stay connected to the voice that lifts you when no one else does. This midnight declaration became your most powerful spiritual weapon. Your words, spoken from the valley of shadow, carried more authority than any praise offered from mountain heights. The enemy never expected this, that when stripped of everything, your faith would shine brightest. That when pushed to your limit, your resolve would stand strongest. That when surrounded by darkness, your light would burn purest. What looked like your end was actually your beginning. What appeared to be your defeat was secretly your greatest victory. Then it happened. Chosen one. That supernatural dream that forever altered your understanding. You found yourself witnessing something few human eyes have seen. A heavenly council discussing your destiny. Not because you were worthy, not because you were perfect, but because your obedience at midnight created ripples in the spirit realm that could not be ignored. You saw them gathered, heavenly beings of light and power, reviewing your journey, discussing your faithfulness, planning your next steps. You heard your name spoken with honor in realms beyond earth. You witnessed the Father's smile when your path was mentioned. In this sacred glimpse behind the veil, you discovered something that humbled you to your core. Your suffering carried cosmic significance. The battles you fought weren't just for your breakthrough, they were for generations to come. The pain you endured wasn't meaningless. It was dismantling strongholds centuries in the making. What looked like personal attacks were actually spiritual landmarks. What felt like targeted pain was strategic positioning. What seemed like random suffering was precisely calibrated training. Then came the revelation that shocked you most. Your enemies had boundaries. The very forces that seemed to attack without limit were actually contained by divine restraint. The opposition that felt overwhelming was permitted only within specific parameters. This far, and no further, was heaven's decree over every attack. What you perceived as the enemy's power was actually evidence of his limitation. What you interpreted as his strength revealed his restricted reach. The council showed you how your greatest pains were your greatest protections, steering you away from destruction, guiding you from hidden traps, saving you from pleasant-looking paths that led to ruin. Then heaven imparted strategy, divine blueprints for your next battle phase, not general principles, but specific instructions. Not vague direction, but precise guidance. Not theoretical concepts, but practical wisdom. You woke from this encounter not just encouraged, but equipped, not just comforted, but commissioned. Not just validated, but strategically positioned. The heavenly council wasn't just observing your journey, they were actively participating in it. They weren't distant spectators, they were invested allies fighting for your victory. After the heavenly revelation came the earthly manifestation, chosen one. People began appearing in your life, seemingly from nowhere, who recognized your calling without explanation, who understood your journey without your words, who connected with your spirit beyond natural reasoning. These weren't random encounters, these were divine appointments, strategically orchestrated connections with other chosen ones walking similar paths. A conversation with a stranger that felt strangely familiar. A message from someone you barely knew that addressed your exact situation. A new friendship that felt decades old within minutes. A mentor who appeared precisely when you needed guidance most. Heaven was connecting you with your spiritual tribe, those whose assignments aligned with yours, whose gifts complemented yours, whose strength could support your weakness. Then something unexpected happened with your former adversaries. People who once opposed you began to see the truth. Those who questioned your calling started recognizing heaven's hand on your life. Those who spread rumors about your character suddenly defended your name. The shift wasn't your doing, it was divine vindication manifesting in its appointed time. Some came seeking reconciliation, humbled by the evidence of God's favor on your life. Others changed their perspective when they saw the fruit of your faithfulness. Still others were simply overcome by conviction that could not be ignored. But the most profound discovery awaited you in resources and provision. What seemed to appear suddenly had actually been prepared years, even decades, in advance. That financial blessing that arrived at the perfect moment, set aside for you before you knew you'd need it. That open door that perfectly matched your calling, prepared while you were still in the wilderness. You discovered help hidden in unlikely places, support from unexpected sources, resources concealed until their appointed time. What looked like last-minute provision was actually long-term preparation. What appeared to be coincidence was divine coordination. What seemed to be luck was loving orchestration. Stop right here. If you haven't subscribed yet, ask yourself why. Every time you search for clarity, every time you feel overwhelmed, God guides you to messages like this. Don't reject what heaven is trying to give you. Subscribe so you stay connected to the voice that lifts you when no one else does. Then came the moment, chosen one. That first public demonstration of your spiritual authority. After seasons of private preparation, hidden growth, and unseen development, heaven positioned you where many could witness what God had built in you. The situation appeared impossible, a crisis that threatened many lives, a problem too complex for human solutions, an attack designed to destroy not just you, but everyone connected to your purpose. Something rose within you, a boldness beyond your natural capacity, a confidence that transcended your personality, a power that flowed through you rather than from you. Words came to your lips with precision that surprised even you. Wisdom flowed from your mouth that you hadn't studied or prepared. Authority emanated from your presence that silenced opposition without argument, and everyone witnessed it. The miraculous intervention that stopped a strategic attack against many people. What should have caused widespread destruction suddenly dissolved before the power flowing through your surrendered vessel. This public demonstration caught the attention of spiritual leaders who had previously dismissed you. Those who once questioned your calling now sought your counsel. Those who rejected your gifting now acknowledged your anointing. Those who closed doors in your face now created platforms for your voice. Their recognition wasn't what validated you. God had already done that in the secret place, but their acknowledgement served a divine purpose, positioning you to impact more lives, influence more hearts, and affect more destinies. Then came the revelation that changed everything. The isolation wasn't punishment, it was specialized training. The wilderness wasn't abandonment, it was advanced preparation. The silence wasn't rejection, it was focused development. God hadn't removed you from community to harm you. He separated you to build something in you that couldn't be constructed in a crowd. He didn't hide you because you weren't ready. He concealed you because what he was creating required protection from premature exposure. Like a master craftsman who covers his greatest work until the perfect moment of unveiling, God had been shaping your authority in secret, building your character in hiding, developing your capacity in isolation. What felt like rejection was actually protection. What seemed like divine disfavor was actually preferential treatment. What appeared to be punishment was actually promotion in disguise. The moment your authority publicly manifested, something shifted in the spiritual atmosphere. The hidden orchestrator of attacks against you, the one who had remained in shadows while sending others to oppose you, was suddenly illuminated by divine light. This wasn't what you expected. This wasn't a stranger. This wasn't an obvious enemy. This was someone close, someone trusted, someone positioned near your purpose. The revelation came with stunning clarity through a dream, a prophetic word, or a divine insight that couldn't be dismissed. You saw how this person had systematically undermined your calling, poisoned your relationships, and attacked your confidence, all while smiling to your face. You understood why their attacks were so precisely targeted, why their words cut so deeply, why their opposition seemed to anticipate your every move. They had access. They had information. They had proximity. But in that same moment of exposure, you witnessed something that left you in awe. The divine protection that had surrounded you without your awareness. Guards you couldn't see, shields you didn't know existed, boundaries the enemy couldn't cross despite their best efforts. What looked like successful attacks were actually permitted tests. What appeared to be enemy victories were divinely filtered challenges. What seemed like overwhelming opposition was precisely measured resistance to build your spiritual strength. Then came the most profound revelation. What your enemy designed for your destruction was actually being transformed into the very platform for your elevation. The attacks meant to silence you became your most powerful testimony. The rejection meant to isolate you connected you with your true allies. The slander meant to discredit you distinguished you from the crowd. God wasn't just defending you. He was using the enemy's strategies as building blocks for your purpose. Then divine consequences began manifesting for the key betrayer. Not because you sought revenge, but because God defends what He anoints. Not because you demanded justice, but because heaven protects what it ordains. Not because you fought back, but because what touches you touches the apple of God's eye. These consequences weren't your doing. They were heaven's response to persistent opposition against a chosen vessel. They weren't your vindication. They were divine confirmation. They weren't your revenge. They were God's protection of His investment in you. What the enemy meant for evil, God transformed into good with such perfect precision that only divine wisdom could have engineered it. Then the season changed. With breathtaking swiftness, chosen one. The restoration you prayed for in secret began manifesting in public. Your reputation, once damaged by rumors and lies, was suddenly defended by unexpected voices. People who never spoke up during your persecution now boldly validated your character. The relationships that fractured during your testing began to heal, not through your effort, but through divine intervention. Apologies arrived from those who misunderstood you. Reconciliation came with those who had judged you unfairly. Community formed around you with those who recognized heaven's mark on your life. Then supernatural favor began opening doors that logic said should remain closed. Opportunities appeared that normally require connections you don't have. Platforms emerged that typically demand credentials you never obtained. Resources flowed that usually follow patterns you haven't established. This wasn't normal advancement. This was divine acceleration, heavenly compensation for seasons of delay and restriction. Those who once mocked your faith, your standards, your convictions, now sought your wisdom. The very people who laughed at your boundaries now asked how to establish their own. Those who ridiculed your devotion now inquired about your relationship with God. Your life became evidence that could not be argued with. Your breakthrough became proof that could not be dismissed. Your elevation became testimony that could not be explained away. Then came that profound revelation. Your public favor was directly connected to your private faithfulness. The honor you now walked in was proportionate to the obedience you demonstrated when no one was watching. The authority you now carried was built through sacrifices no one ever saw you make. What looked like overnight success to others was actually the fruit of midnight battles they never witnessed. What appeared to be sudden promotion was actually the reward for years of unseen preparation. What seemed like lucky breaks were divine appointments scheduled before you were born. The vindication wasn't just for you. It was for everyone watching your journey. Your restoration wasn't just personal. It was prophetic. Your elevation wasn't just individual. It was instructional for a generation that needs living proof of God's faithfulness. Just when victory seemed secure, chosen one, the unexpected final battle arrived. Not from enemies this time, but from within. Not through opposition, but through opportunity. Not via attack, but through attraction. With newfound influence came unprecedented temptation. With elevated position came subtle pressure. With public platform came private testing, unlike anything you'd faced before. The temptation was masterfully crafted, tailored specifically to your deepest desires and unhealed wounds. The opportunity to use your new authority for personal gain rather than kingdom purpose. The chance to settle old scores rather than extend mercy. The option to build your name rather than glorify God's. This battle was more dangerous than any external warfare because it appealed to legitimate desires with illegitimate fulfillment. It offered shortcuts to destinations God intended you to reach through the longer path of integrity. The enemy, having failed to stop you through opposition, now attempted to corrupt you through opportunity. Having failed to break you through pain, now tried to buy you through pleasure. Having failed to defeat you through attack, now attempted to derail you through applause. The choice stood before you with crystal clarity: immediate reward or lasting legacy, temporary satisfaction or eternal impact, personal vindication or generational transformation. Heaven watched this decision more closely than any previous test. Angels leaned in to witness your response. The spiritual realm held its breath as you stood at this final crossroads. This moment would determine your destiny more definitively than any battle you'd fought before. This choice would reveal your true character more accurately than any trial you'd endured. This decision would demonstrate your real motives more clearly than any testimony you'd shared. The pressure was immense. The justifications were reasonable. The compromises seemed small compared to the benefits they offered. After all you've suffered, the whisper came. Don't you deserve this? After how they treated you, the thought persisted. Wouldn't this be justice? After what you've sacrificed, the voice suggested. Isn't this fair compensation? The final test wasn't about your power. It was about your purpose. Not about your abilities, but about your heart. Not about what you could do, but about who you would become. Then it happened, chosen one. The moment heaven had been preparing since before your birth. After the final test, after the ultimate decision, after proving your heart beyond all questioning, your coronation day arrived. Not with human fanfare, not with earthly recognition, but with heavenly acknowledgement that transcended all worldly honor. The full mantle of authority was conferred upon you, not as a reward for perfection, but as confirmation of your surrender. Not because you never failed, but because you refused to quit. Not because you never fell, but because you always rose again. This authority came with weight and with wonder, with responsibility and with power, with burden and with blessing. This wasn't just position. It was permission to operate in realms few ever access. Then the full scope of your divine purpose was revealed. So much bigger than anything you had imagined during your darkest nights. What you thought was a calling to impact dozens was actually an assignment to influence thousands. What you believed was a ministry to your community was actually a mission to transform nations. The limitations you accepted were never heaven's boundaries. They were training parameters that would eventually expand beyond your comprehension. Then you glimpsed the heavenly celebration of your journey completed. Angels rejoicing over battles won, victories secured, and faithfulness demonstrated. You realized that every silent sacrifice, every private tear, every hidden obedience had been witnessed, recorded, and honored by heaven. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was forgotten. Nothing was overlooked. Most humbling of all was the revelation of how your journey had already changed countless lives. Many you'd never meet until eternity. People who watched your faithfulness from a distance. Lives impacted by your resilience. Destinies altered because you refused to quit when quitting made sense. Your obedience created ripples that became waves that became floods of transformation in lives you never knew you touched. This wasn't the end. It was the true beginning. Not the final chapter, but the first page of the greater story heaven had always intended. Before you go, chosen one, Don't forget, the fact that you made it to the end of this message means something. Your spirit needed this. Don't walk away without subscribing. It costs nothing, but it means everything for the journey God is taking you on. Join the family. Your breakthrough might be in the next video.